2018, related to research and related to how we have a successful career in academia and outside academia. I'm Francesca Metta, I'm a professor here in Applied Finance. Very strange things to say I'm Applied Finance in engineering, but I'm an engineer like all of you. So the part of the fellowship is quite important because as all of you will describe, it's a way to enter in academia, also to develop our own research. So separately from a research grant and so on. So it's, however, it's not a simple, sometimes simple task. So we will hear first from Kalita, which you can explain what they do exactly, and then we go straight to the fellow that we have here. I've selected 3 from the same group. So you are all from the Royal Academy of Engineering. Yes, no financial stuff. I'm good. But above all, so we will hear why you have applied, what were the difficulties, how long did you take it to write, the interview and so on. Okay, so I leave the floor to Khalid and then please, because it's informal, I will like, so stop them, ask questions, ask whatever you want, any question. Wherever you think that is not clear, we are here. No, they are here to answer. Okay, please, Khalid. Thank you.
Hi, so my name's Khalid Talab. I work for the Dean's Research Facilitation Office. So it's part of OVPR, so part of the Office of the Vice Provost Research. It's a central department, and essentially, the main thing that we do is support academics writing their grant and fellowship applications. So this is from individual fellowships at a postdoc level up to multidisciplinary, multi-institutional beds like the Centres for Doctoral Training. So I'm just going to talk about some of the practical things about when you're writing a grant. So we're not going to go through the grant schemes which are available. This is more once you're writing a grant proposal or a fellowship proposal, there are certain things that are in common with all of them. Now this is very much rooted in what EPSRC wants. That's the Engineering and Physical Sciences Research Council. Most of you, almost all of you I'd say, work in civil engineering, your work would be within their remit. And it's just one of the ways of getting funded. So just to, straight away, that's not great. So just to go through, there's some sort of common elements to every fellowship proposal. And these are a track record, so that's essentially your achievements to date and your experience. The case for support, which is essentially the scientific explanation of what you're going to do. Now this is the most important part of a fellowship application, of any grant application. We're not actually going to talk about this today, but the reason being, when you come to us for support, we can help you with structure and clarity and the balance of the case for support. But we can't give you real feedback on the scientific merit. That's something you need to talk to your academic colleagues about. Then we'll focus a little bit on impact and importance. This is, a real key thing for EPSRC, and it's actually almost ubiquitous across every funder. Things about the work plan, so project management, justification of resources, so how you have the necessary equipment and resources to deliver your project, and then some supplementary things like letters of support, your CV, list of publications. It's worth bearing in mind before you start writing that you're going to be assessed. So it's not the same as writing a research paper. A grant application is something very different, and each grant application, whichever funder you go to, will have a criteria for assessment, and they have guidance documents so you can look at that before you start. There's 4 general areas. Number 1, research excellence. So this is essentially, are you doing world-leading science? You will need to be able to answer yes to that. That for some schemes like VRC, that's the only criteria that they judge on. Other things, impact and importance, so why are we doing the work, where does this fit into the research funding landscape, your track record, so why would he give you a fellowship? A fellowship is an individual award, so more than an investment in a project, it's an investment in you and your long-term career. And then finally, have you thought about how you're actually going to deliver this and manage the project effectively?
Okay, can I stop for 1 second?
Sure.
Sorry, because now I will, my first question to Khalid and the rest. You said something important, so we have to shift from the proposal to you. So, at the moment that you said, I'm going to apply to a fellowship, did you feel I'm not up to the fellowship, I'm not so good? Did you have this problem? Or you say, okay, I'm arrogant enough, I can be a fellow? How did you face the writing and you knew that you were worth it? Did you have any doubts?
Okay, so on my side, the story is this: I finished my PhD in December 2008, and from like 6-7 months before that, I was working on a Lieberman Trust Fellowship.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew that I wanted to continue in academia. So I look around, I found a call for Lieberman Trust. I prepared a proposal for Lieberman Trust Early Career Fellowships. And it was not fun. Okay, so I moved on a postdoc position. 2-3 years down the line, I basically reapplied with that proposal, expanded to Royal Academy of Engineering, and then it got fun. So the first time I knew that, when I wrote the proposal, I knew that no one has done it. And the time that I was a postdoc, I wanted to do that work, and I was just keep looking around to see if anyone is doing it. So when I submitted to Royal Academy, I knew that I had every confidence no one has done it. This is a novel project. So on that aspect, I was quite
Confident.
Yeah. So at the interview, I really wanted to know what they have to say on that front. On my side is my CV, number of papers, etc. Is that strong enough? For the Lieberman Trust application, clearly it wasn't. At the time, I had like 4 papers. For Royal Academy, I had at the time that I submitted, I had 7 papers. They have to say they numbers. So on my side, I don't know. I wasn't probably that confident if on my side.
Yeah. Okay, let's see that.
So I have just finalized the process from last year from the Academy of Engineering, and what was most important for me was to understand what is a fellowship, and I just said it's about you and what is expected from a fellowship. So when it's about you, it's not. So a fellowship is not a project. You have a research vision, and as Khaled said, you need to be shaping, building, transforming the future area of your research vision. And what you need to link is why you are the person to do that. What are the skills that you have that you are the right person to be developing that. So when you award the fellowship, they expect you to be a future leader, to invest in you to get this return in the future. And as soon as you understand that, and he said it's about how you're going to future. He said, I was not the first time that I applied, I also was rejected for the level home. But you need to understand which body you're applying and what they expect from you. So for the level home, they want the theoretical work, blue sky research. For the Royal Academy of Engineering, they want to apply it engineering. They want you to collaborate with the industry, so they expect you to have build some relationship with the industry and how you're going to build on that. So like he said, I have 7 papers. I have 60 papers.
60.
Yes.
60.
60. Yes. So it doesn't matter, you say, oh, am I better than him? No, we both got the fellowship. So you need to when you're writing about your profile, you need to be clear why you're the right person to do that. What different skills that you're bringing, different areas of skill that you have developed of your fellowship, of your PhD and your postdoc to achieve that.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point actually. So the Royal Academy of Engineering used to publish this matrix that they would use to essentially grade applications, and it would include things like number of papers and number of citations, but also a whole load of other things as well, like grant money already secured, number of patents, that kind of thing. So before I started applying, to answer your question, I was very confident that I would be able to, secure a grant. And then I looked at this table and I thought, oh my gosh, well, I can check the first two boxes, citations and papers, but everything else I've done nothing. And I think that kind of thing, you see something, which is actually exactly why the Royal Academy of Engineering don't publish this table anymore, but I will bring it up later just to show you. And I think the important thing is you have to have confidence in your own ability and your own what you've achieved yourself. You have to have confidence in what you've already done and in the idea that you have and what you intend to do. There's not really much point in looking left and right and comparing, how you are versus person X and person Y, because ultimately your specialisms might be easily differentiated from theirs, and that might be a reason why you can get a fellowship. But yes, when you first start applying these kind of things, you start looking around and thinking, oh well, how do I compare to others? And that can knock your confidence a bit.
Yes, okay. Sorry guys, we have a mixed question, please.
Sure, I mean, I think we've covered quite a lot of the things about the track record, which is essentially in your application. You want to highlight your relevant experience and achievements. I think people can be too modest, which is it's not really the place to play down your achievements. But the way to sort of do it is be factual. Also, it's not just regurgitating your CV, which says, I went to UCL, I did a PhD, then I got a postdoc position. What you want is have some sort of narrative flow, so when you do your PhD, you develop a certain set of skills which are useful towards this fellowship you're applying for. Your postdoc, you develop complementary skills. You're also awarded these prizes, or you've got this bit of funding, or you've published in this journal, which is actually the top journal in your field. And this is like a narrative, and what the narrative is saying is that you are essentially the best person to carry out this research. And if you can quantify this, so if you've won a prize, the person reading it may not know what this prize is, but if you say that yours was selected, you won the best paper prize out of 500 entries, suddenly you think, oh, this is a substantial thing. So any way you can be quantitative, that's great. Now, importance, this is always going to be a critical element of your proposal, just because there's a finite amount of funding to go around. Now, why would funders put the money into your area as opposed to a different area? Civil engineering, why are we looking at transport modelling as opposed to building tsunami defences? What you're trying to do is make a case for why your work is important. And really the way to do this is to bring in information from strategy from government. So the industrial strategy is a big thing, it's a big pot of money. Now if you can link your research to that, then that's obviously highlighting how important it is that the government is putting X billion into it, and this is supplemented by your work. Also things like industry white papers, so if ARAP have identified your area as being particularly important, then draw on that and highlight it. Again, facts and statistics that you can put into your work make your reports a bit more credible. And we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about impact, because it's very important, especially for funders like EPSLC, but also it's frequently done quite badly at all levels. And the key thing when we think about impact is who is benefiting, how are they benefiting, and really the critical thing is what are you going to do to ensure that these benefits happen. So it's not sufficient to actually say, I'm doing this research, it's great, it's going to solve the problem. There are steps in between doing the research and solving the problem, which you need to have at least considered before while you write your proposal. And generally there are these sort of 4 areas. You don't need to cover all of them, it's great if you can. You would expect knowledge, so new techniques, scientific advancements would be a given. So just to say that there's loads of words on all these slides, there's too many, and I will share all the slides afterwards, so you don't need to worry about writing everything down. Things like economic impact, so if they're going to be, new spin-out companies started, or industry interested, society, does this work have policy implications? And then, especially if you're, say, having a fellowship that's going to have PhD students involved, postdocs involved, what skills are you developing? What's the people pipeline? What's their career development going to do? I think the thing to highlight from this is it's very broad, and you're probably going to need partners, either other academics, partners in industry, policymakers. You're going to need to bring some of these people into your work if you're going to credibly say that you have this sort of impact. This is just a slide. This is given as guidance by RC UK. We're not going to go into it. It's just to show there's actually a huge amount of things that you can potentially label as impact. Like I say, you won't be able to see it. It's not a particularly good slide for this sort of presentation. And I will share it, but there are a lot of things to think about, and you only need to pick out 1 or 2 to write credible pathways to impact. The thing that we see a lot of is statements, these sort of broad brush statements, this will reduce carbon emissions, this will have a direct benefit on the economy. It won't do unless you put the sort of steps in place to have this impact. Now, in a 5-year fellowship, no one is expecting you to have radically changed government policy or, completely altered whichever industry you're involved in. But you do need to understand that there are certain steps that you're going to have to take to get this involvement with industry. And at least, you've shown an understanding of these steps and you've made the first step. So whether this is partnerships with industry, how you handle your IP, these sort of things, are you planning a spin-out company? These sort of things can add credibility to an impact statement. And again, these are all things that if you come to us in our office, we will help you develop these into something that fits the funders' wants. Now this is a bit of a dry topic, justification of resources. So if you're planning a project, you're going to need certain resources probably, whether it's computational time or materials or access to equipment. And then to basic things like travel, you're going to need to go to conferences, you're going to need to visit your collaborators. This is essentially part of the project management. And basically to do it well, you just need to justify every bit of costs. Quite often I'll see, I'm planning to go to conferences 3 times at £1,500 each, and the travel budget is £10,000. Now, obviously it doesn't add up, but it leads to the question, where's the rest of the money going? Conversely, don't try and minimise your travel budget thinking, if I spend less on this, they're more likely to fund me. It's going to be an appropriate use of it. So going to conferences, travelling to meet people, going to visit other laboratories is appropriate use of your time, and budget accordingly. And then you have a defensible position about where you're spending your money.
Can I just start with that? The way I found most useful to do that is I looked at my travel that I'd done over the course of my PhD, my busiest travel year, and I used those receipts to work out roughly what the amount would be. It was just a simple way of being able to break down and justify those costs.
You also have money for consumables, so what you need to do to think about is when you write your proposal, you cannot write something that you don't have. If you need specifically equipment that you don't have, you cannot buy that. So it needs to be clear that you have everything that you need. You have all support that you need. And you're not going to need extra money for that.
Yeah, so for example, in our case, if you needed, say, a £50,000 laser, well, for most fellowships, for most individual fellowships, they're not going to cover that kind of capital equipment. So if you're assuming somehow that you're going to be able to use that equipment, you either need to justify how you're going to buy it or how you're going to obtain it to use that.
Does it work if you, in the proposal, this is also to David, if you say, I have a co-funding, so for example, the industry will support me in some way. So do you think that having support from outside, so additionally to your fellowship, it is good, is a good tactic, good strategy or not?
They expect you to help. So
They
for example,
expect it. So
then
then,
For the road company
yeah,
engineering,
yes.
different schemes. I think if other outside bodies, I mean, we'll talk about this in letters of support,
Yeah.
but if outside bodies are willing to spend their money or give you time and resources, it's always going to be beneficial because essentially they're saying, the private company is saying, you know, they're willing to invest in you and your project. So it's always going to strengthen your case as an academic. It's also, if you think about the Research Council or the funder, a better return on their investment because they're giving you 1 million, for example, but actually they're getting, say, 1.5 million when you top up all the either access to data or equipment or these expertise. So, you know, in sort of cold hard cash terms, it's a better return on their investment.
So, 2 items to add to that. It doesn't have to be, it depends on the nature of your research. My project was biomedical related, and I needed to have, for example, surgeons involved in the project and so forth. On my project, I did not have any financial contribution from any company. Okay, I had letter of support from 2 very well-known hospitals and maybe the leaders who were going to support my proposal and contribute from the clinical side. So I think it also depends on the nature of the project. The other item I wanted to highlight was that on that front, I costed to a month of a stay in one of the providers in the proposal. And what happened retrospectively was that when I was there, just by sheer accident, I saw another fellow of Royal Academy. And, you know, it was University of Washington, and this guy was there. And he had costed for about a year of time, you know, to be spent there. So it just shows, you know, how different application can be. And I think it's a great idea and great opportunity to spend a relatively substantial amount of time in a different lab to get experience, because later on these things become a bit more difficult as you progress as lectures and so forth. So I think if there is a good reason, and you know, for example, it could be a laser that you need to use or whatever it is, that and you can carry a body of work in a different environment. I think I personally find it really useful.
So you are saying that the fellowship is also a way to not only to do the research, your research, but also to develop yourself and to develop the networks that they will be fundamental in your career in the future. So spending time outside the laboratory UCL is fundamental. Is one of the fundamental things. Did you put any time outside the laboratory?
Well, so we're in a similar field,
Yeah.
and in our field, the main thing actually is we're very well resourced within UCL, and the main thing for us is to be able to go to meetings and meet with other people on specific topics. But that's obviously expensive because wherever the meetings happen to be, we're only there for a few days, but in the flights and all the rest of it. So for example, yesterday, I'm just back from a meeting yesterday in Texas. It was a 1-day meeting, but with the fellowship, you have the flexibility to attend these meetings. As long as you budgeted for them, and they are actually tremendously useful.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So just to say, it's very rare that a company will actually give you cash. So we probably, basically won't give you money, but it's usually in-kind contributions, which they might assign a value to. So just to move on to the work plan, again, this is sort of project management style thing, but you should really be able to, a fellowship is a 3 or 5 year long project. You need to have a good idea about, what the major tasks are involved, how they fit together. So, this is sort of almost like a risk assessment. If one task fails, will you be able to do the rest of the project? How do they link together? What are the key milestones? What are the key deliverables? So this is all things that can really help. If you set this out early, it can really help you write a good proposal, because you make sure you've actually covered everything that you need to do. And these sometimes you'll see graphical representations within a proposal. I personally think that something in green is probably the simplest, clearest way. Once you start getting, Gantt chart's quite a boring looking thing, but some things are just obligated to deliver a Gantt chart. Other things that are more complicated, lots of boxes, start becoming, defeat the objective. It becomes more complicated than just writing down what you're going to do. But anyhow, a small other point that I personally like to see in all project proposals, fellowship proposals, is to actually begin, the very first thing you write is a very sort of broad, high level, easy to understand summary statement of vision, which just describes what you're going to do, why it's important, and very broadly how you're going to do it. Now, the purpose of this, I would say, is to get everyone who's reading it on the same page. At EPSRC, you are sent to expert reviewers, who know your field. For other fellowship applications, you may go to a much broader panel, people who are not particularly knowledgeable or even really interested in, your field of research. And what you want to do is bring them in so they can say immediately, right, this is what this is about, and this is why it's important, and actually, get their interest. As I say, this is a proposal, not an academic paper. So the style, generally, even if it's reviewed by experts, needs to be a lot more accessible than your average journal paper. So we just move on to letters of support. Generally, if you've got project partners, which almost all fellowships do have, grant applications, you're going to need a letter of support, and this is just sort of confirmation that they support your proposal, but it's a little bit more than that. It's not just sufficient to say that a professor in the civil field at a different university thinks this is a good idea. What they're actually interested in is tangible means of support. How are they going to help you deliver your project? And typically there are sort of 3 areas. So you can get one from industrial partners or possibly government policymakers. You can get one from other academics, and you can get one from your host organisation. So generally your head of department will need to write your letter of support.
They would be nice, I think they would expect you to have your department fund your PhD students to support your fellowship.
For individual fellowships, I
For
suppose.
individual
Yes.
So your department, and they have to state it also that you have a place in the laboratory.
Yeah,
Yes.
that would make sense.
Definitely. Who knows where you will sit.
Yeah,
So-
if you need, if there are.
Yes, a space. Do you need a space as well?
Yes.
Laboratory, something.
So I guess ultimately your application is kind of supported by a chair in that university department. So you're essentially going to be based in that group. Right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of given, and that sort of information is coming up in the head of department HOD letter of support that you're going to be, this can have access to so and so. And PhD student is obviously not only to secure the application, but also for long term to deliver the project and also make that project, that fellowship, a successful one, because it offload, to my experience, works from us and get us to then write the proposals and
But Francesca, there is a question for you. This I've approached our department for support for PhD students, and every proposal I keep on asking the same question, and I always get pushed back with the comment that actually if your costs are beyond X, you get a PhD student, otherwise you don't. So basically the costs, they will only provide a PhD student to me if my proposal is over £1 million.
Yes.
Um,
This was,
so we have a problem with our department.
yes, so this was a strange rule that was implemented before.
And the problem with that is that other university applicants come in with PhD students, and actually one of my proposals, EPSS reviews specifically came back and said we're disappointed that actually the department is not providing a PhD student, and I was actually marked down for it.
Yeah, no, it happened also to me, yes. Because in our department, we can, so it's very strange because in our department in civil engineering we are people that can get 5 million because they need staff, and a person like me that does research just with a computer. So my research grants are very relatively small, and if you set up something like this, like okay, if you don't get 1 million, you don't get any PhD. I will be always discriminated in any application. Yes, I know. Yes, I'm the research director. I should have tackled this problem, but but the first thing is like, you have a whole budget terrible. So yes, I know it's a problem. It's a problem that we are going to tackle.
So is this? So I'm just curious how this ties in with the EE. So when you're talking about getting a PhD student from the department, would this be funded ultimately by the EPSRC?
No, it will be funded by the department. So it's like a support in your application. Say, okay, I'm writing a grant, and the department, because support this idea, is ready to pay for 1 PhD, 2 PhDs. They will pay completely by the department. So this system works for us only if we have grant, I think over 1 million.
I think so. That's
Yes. So if you apply for, so a person like me, it's impossible. So I don't write it. I look for a sponsor to support the PhD.
So the way that they dealt with this for fellowships within electronic engineering is that they earmark a doctoral training partnership, studentship for fellowships. So that's actually no real cost to them. It just means that one of the fellowships they would have had, studentships they would have had anyway, can then just be earmarked for a fellowship holder.
Okay. They market like this. Okay. This is a trick.
There are some problems with that. I had problems with trying to find the students for the DTU because, as you know, there's constraints on who can actually apply. But other than that, it's a very good idea.
So they earmark some of the doctoral training center PhD for you.
Yes.
They say, okay, these are for the fellowship.
Should you be
It's
successful?
in the letter, but that's how they get
They
it.
write it. You can write in the letter, but it's okay. Nice.
No, you
trick.
get the PhD, you get.
You get the PhD.
Mm.
Yes.
Well, you'll get the funding for it, and then it's up to you to then go and find the PhD.
Okay.
obviously.
So you just have to find the PhD.
Yeah.
Okay. Tricks. Useful.
And just one more thing to just, since it brought up, I was in another meeting, and it can have huge impact. If you have a good PhD student right at the beginning of the fellowship, it can make all the difference to not having one or to having one who is not really good. It can really accelerate the whole thing, and it's, at some point it's all about the next grants and to get focused on those.
So how many PhD do you have in your fellowship? So each of you. So how many do you have? 1, 2.
So I had none.
You didn't have one.
But
So
I
what
had,
you advise us to do?
I had, yeah, but I managed to get the 2.
During that time.
Within the first 1 or 2 years, I managed to get 2 students from different ones.
Well, you haven't started yet.
Yeah.
So, but you will have. They
Yeah,
are
we will
able
have.
to come to you.
You have the.
And for me, I have So I advertised my DTP. I didn't have any suitable applicants, so that one I actually no longer have. But I have ended up as subsidiary supervisor for 5, and that's actually been very useful because I have quite a broad pool of expertise. You know, there were different stages in their PhDs, and they're able to work on small projects. So that's worked out very well for me, and I'll be putting out an advert very soon for a PhD.
For a PhD, yes.
That will be industrially funded.
Yes, because it's totally amazing. Okay, yes, so some tricks that we can use.
Yeah, I mean, not a huge amount more to say about this. It's just that in the letters of support, a good one will be very much specific to your project. It will tie into departmental strategy, and then it will be explicit with the support that it's being offered. I think the main thing to say is if you want a good letter of support, you're probably going to have to write it yourself and then give that out. If you leave it blank, you'll probably get quite a generic message. So sit down with your head of department or whoever would be, or industrial partner, discuss about what they will give you, but then you come up with a draft so you can tailor it to exactly what you say. You can use the language that you want to use. You can generate the enthusiasm yourself, and then generally they will be, as long as they've discussed it and you're not suddenly putting in new contributions, they will be happy to get that back to you and return it signed. What I would also say is I would start this process as soon as possible once you've decided you want to apply for a fellowship, because certainly with industry, but also heads of departments, very busy people, industry, it won't be high up on their list of priorities, and you don't want this to be the thing that is holding up your submission. And so the sooner you get that sort of in hand, the better.
So, okay, can you, how long did you take to think about it and to write?
So I started working on mine a year after starting a postdoc after a PhD. So I did postdoc and then a year, and I was already, if you're working actively in the field, I think that the most difficult thing for people I've spoken to are ones who've kind of left the field briefly and then tried to come back in with the fellowship idea. That's very, very challenging because most fields move very quickly these days. So you should already kind of have an idea of where you would like to go. It wouldn't have been nice in my PhD if I'd done the X, Y, and Z. So it doesn't take that long then to write down those ideas. Maybe a month to get an initial draft. That's in good shape. That was my experience.
Yeah, so mine, since I had the idea, was 3 weeks, but 3 weeks, 7 days a week, 14 hours a day, with a lot of support. Himself, he helped me a lot.
So the support from colleagues or from also?
From senior academics.
Senior academics.
So you need to have support, otherwise it's going to be very, very hard for you.
So your question was about the letter of support, or was about
No,
the
about
application?
About the application. How long did you take from thinking about it to do it?
Okay, for the month, sorry, it was not including letters of support.
No, exactly.
So on my side, because it started, as I said right from the beginning, I started with the RAEng application, and I literally expanded so many came to the RAEng, and I decided I want to apply for it. I had a draft that I was expanding, basically, and next stage of that proposal, I just added to it, so I made it a bigger proposal. Time-wise, I don't know, let's say months. On the letter of support, because so on the letter of support, just wanted to add a point. I have had emails, people asking me how many letter of support you had in your application. I had 4 letter of supports in my application, from 2 clinics, 2 hospitals, and from another academic collaborator, and another academic collaborator. So 2 from Oxford basically, and 2 from Seattle. My application coming, one from university, one from hospital. said, I didn't have any company because that wasn't the nature of the project. The other thing I wanted to say was, surely you are looking into an area, and I would recommend you to find people who are really leading in that area. Try to see if you can work with them and get their attention. It's good for the application, good for you later on once you got it. So my suggestion would be just find the real leaders, try to get their attention and get their support.
I think that's a good point actually. So when I said about expanding where you've finished your PhD, actually most fellowships say specifically not to do that. What I meant is that's a really good starting point for writing a fellowship, but you really need to talk with and have an awareness of who and what is being researched more broadly, much more broadly than where you've done your PhD or postdoctoral research. Because the fellowship idea is that you really are pioneering an idea in the field and not just incrementally moving on from what's been done before.
Okay, can I ask you just another question? It's curious because I think it's the fundamental part of the fellowship. So at a certain point after the PhD, you decided that this was your life in some way. As I said, this is, and rather than go towards postdoc, which in a postdoc, practically I designed the research and then you help me to do the research, but it's not your research, it's my research in some way. We can write it together, but it fundamentally is the PI that designed it. Here on the other hand, you decide I want to do this life, this is my, so you have made a decision for your life. Did you have any doubts? And they say, I don't really like.
But this is the core of the fellowship.
Yeah.
The fellowship is you're at good, you're at leading your field. What the fellowship is going to give you is research independence, which you cannot have with this field.
Yeah, so I suppose that's the point, isn't it? That's the reason why you apply for a fellowship. If you have any doubts, you really need to think about why you're applying for a fellowship, because that is actually the purpose of the fellowship, is to launch you into the field. And if you don't want to be in the field within academia, then you should really be looking at other options.
So this is the standard question that they usually ask you in the interview: why is this a fellowship and not the program and not the grant, the research grant?
Yeah, exactly. Yes, this is a question that you will ask immediately. Really, this is one of your questions. Why fellowship and not a research grant?
Yeah, I mean, well, to answer it, because it will come up. I mean, you can come up with your own answer, but what we typically say is a research grant is a self-contained piece of work. A fellowship is much broader than that. So if you think about where you'd want to be in 20 years' time, leaving the field, if you're a professor of whatever it is, this is the first step towards that. Now, you will deliver a project in so much that you've got work packages and outcomes, but actually at the end of a fellowship, you'll have almost a whole career ahead of you in the things that you've explored, you've created this. You'll have taken that time to develop a network of people who can help you, not in this 5 years, but actually throughout your career. If you've got this long-term goal for your field, then really what you want to do is solve the imminent problems, but also create this network of collaborators who are going to help you, solve the long-term problem. It's really going to be the leading sort of the way to do things in your field for the next 10, 15, 20 years. So it's much broader than that, and the fellowship really gives you the space to develop certain aspects of your skill set, your career, rather than just sort of in 3 years' time, I've done this project, I've delivered it, now what's next? So I hope that's sort of clear, but I mean you can sort of think about it yourself and come up with your own ideas there if you want to maybe add to that.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
So I whenever that I was sitting on the other side, I find this meeting most useful when people are actually sharing experience. Related to that, I had this a bit that I kind of didn't say. So I had the fellowship. I got the legal application rejected as a fellowship. my PI applied to that project twice to 2 different funding levels as a research grant. And I was fine, I was informed, and I was fine, and one of them I was named as a research investigator, and those did not get funded for whatever reason. And then eventually it happened. So to go back to whether it's via fellowship or not a research grant, I guess ultimately for me was that I had a body of work that I wanted to do. I genuinely wanted to do that body of work. And I just could not let it go when I moved on and I did postdoc. Okay, so I moved on to something completely different. I mean, it's still within that area. And I did it for 3.5 years. Pretty much every single day of that was that I wanted to do this project. And I guess when it comes to, if you have something of that nature that you really want to do and you just can't let it go, just go for it. And just don't be disappointed, when they turn you down, just fight back. So.
Amy, we'll talk about some general tips and advice at the end as well. Just finishing off the types of support, letters of support. So as well as studentships, which obviously is a slight issue, things like consumables, access to equipment. So if you're getting a letter of support from another university because you're using their £50,000 laser, then get them to say that you have guaranteed time on it, and it's sort of essentially it's worth this much. If they can put a figure on that, that's great. Other things, advisory groups. So one of the ways to really engage with industry or particularly policy is to have a policy maker, someone from government, sit on an advisory group to your proposal. UCL public policy. UCL has a public policy unit who can really help you develop these ideas if you think you've got policy relevance, policy relevant work, and then other things like events and hosting visits, etc. So general advice. So remember who you're writing this for. Again, each scheme you're applying to. First off, check that you're eligible. There'll be a number of eligibility criteria. This can be how long post PhD you are, for example, and whether you do or don't have a permanent position, these sort of things. Make sure that you're able to apply to this scheme, and once you are, look at the eligibility, criteria by which you're judged, and who's going to be reading the proposal. Again, when you say think about what the reviewer will most like to see, I think this refers to the fact that you can get caught up in all the impact and letters of support and things like that, and actually, again, the thing that will get you funded is the science, the case for support, that is key. And particularly if you're being judged by other scientists, what they want to know is your methodology. They want to know exactly what you're doing, why it's so novel, what are these exciting outputs. And get feedback where you can. So you can bring at any stage, whether you've just got a draft idea or you've got a first draft, or you want help replying to reviewers' comments, or you want help preparing for an interview, you can come to our department and we will help you out there. Also, please do get feedback from your senior colleagues, so PIs, people in your group, especially people who've been successful at securing funding from the funding source that you're applying to. Now each application's got a slightly different flavour, so people who have experience of getting money from these funders, EPSRC, Royal Academy of Engineering, will have a good understanding of what the grant funders are looking for. And finally, please do tell your department you're going to need help doing the research costings. That's something that we don't do, that's done in your department. You're probably going to have a set of negotiation between what support is on offer, especially if there's some difficulty in securing a PhD student, or there needs to be some wrangling, or it needs to be included in departmental budgets. So the sooner you can make them aware that you're going to apply, the better. And this is just quite general about how the style of writing, which is essentially, the reviewers are, scientists, they might be experts in your field, but they're also human, and you want to read things that are sort of easy to digest, readable, enjoyable to read even. So, you don't need to clutter it up with jargon and acronyms, it makes it difficult to read. Be clear in what you're doing. If you can't explain it clearly, at least at the start, and then get into more details, it's going to make it very difficult for the reviewer to understand what you're doing. And then, certain things like, be positive, you will do stuff. And if you're talking about what you're going to do rather than a research group, and a fellowship is usually an individual endeavour, you say, I will deliver this, rather than, we, in a passive tense, sort of, we would put forward this idea. And then there's all sorts of other things, but I mean, that's really a proofreading thing right before the end, formatting. And then, sort of finally, from me, some things about fellowships. A massive thing, and I think everyone else will talk about this, and it's come up already, is independence. Be independent. This is your route to independent research. And really, it makes it, if you have done a PhD at UCL, if you're doing a postdoc at UCL and you want to hold a fellowship in the same group at UCL, how are you then becoming independent? How are you moving away from your supervisor, moving away from your PI? Now, I'm not saying you can't do it, I'm not saying you have to go elsewhere. Actually, you want to strongly make the case that UCL is the best place to do it. Also, we won't help you write a fellowship to go elsewhere, so in that respect, we'd like you to stay here, and we'd like you to bring your research here. But there's other things you can do, and you can be doing it while you're doing a PhD, while you're doing your postdoc, that can show your independence. So these are things like getting little grants for yourself, little bits of travel grants, things like this. These little bits of money are available, and it all adds to your, your CV, your track record. And now you can use this money to maybe go and visit another laboratory. Go and someone you meet at a conference, someone who's been a collaborator before, someone who works in your field, who's interested in your work. If you can get the money and the time, get out and go and visit their lab for a few weeks, a month. Now, if you can then write a paper with them, that's great, because you've got papers that don't have your PI on it, don't have your PhD supervisor. And this is all showing that you're growing your own network separate from them. Other things, like, you can do policy secondments, things like this, things that are going to set you apart from the crowd. What else have we got? Things like public engagements, or if you can organise sessions at conferences, these sort of things, you're really starting to show that you're becoming a leader in this field, you're making a name for yourself in this field. And this will all go to, set you apart from your peers, and essentially show that you've got a broader interest in, science in your field, you're becoming a leader, and you're becoming more visible as a researcher. And yes, please do get support where you can. I've always found that your colleagues, even senior academics, are very happy to spend some time helping you develop your ideas. Certainly we, as an office, are happy to help you develop your ideas. And I think very important, don't give up. The success rate for fellowships is very low. It ranges from sort of at the top 30%, maybe 25%, all the way down to sort of 8%. Now, and a lot of every academic, every senior professor has a massive list of proposals and grants which were not funded, which were unsuccessful, and most of the people who get fellowships, or certainly a significant proportion of them, do it at the second or third time of asking. Going through the application process, you learn a lot from doing it. So yeah, don't be put off if you get rejected in the first instance. Try and learn from it. Try and get feedback from the people who review it, and then keep looking for future opportunities. I think that's everything I'd like to go over.
Okay, so let's ask we have a question, please.
Yeah, I have a question on that. What is your experience, also your experience with applying to multiple funders at the same time with roughly the same proposal, just to increase your chances?
Well, you can do that. You can't do what you can't do to get both funders.
Yeah, of course.
So
yeah.
I mean, each funder will need to be. You'll need to tailor your
A lot.
tailor it a lot. Well, I mean,
I did that.
Yeah.
Like
Sorry,
for
sorry.
the Royal Society and for the Royal Academy of Engineering. But you have, because the requirements are different, the questions are different, and the amount of words that, so like for the Royal Academy of Engineering, 600 words talking about you. For the Royal Society, it's 500 words, including why should you get that fellowship. So, to work from 600 to 500 and add another information you spent a day. It's just one example.
A lot of the work also is letters of support, and you'll find that people are very happy to give you one letter of support for one funding body, but they won't just, they are serious commitments, and people won't just, rubber stamp every single letter that you put in front of them. And I think, again, for you, there was somebody quite esteemed in the field who said he'd support one but not the other.
Yeah, so the thing, so for example, the methodology for the Royal Society is 2 pages. For the Royal Academy of Engineering, you have a certain amount of words that you can fill up. Because what they expect you from the Royal Society is, they don't want letters of support from industry. They want letters of support from outstanding scientists around the world, someone that's a Royal Society fellow, very important scientist. So it's completely different. And then you need to change the scope and how you design your fellowship to attend that kind of funding, specific funding. So it's not.
It's less than double the work, but
Yeah.
it's not much less than double the work.
But you can do so. You're not.
You can do it.
You're not. You're not waiting on the outcome of one before you apply to another. With the same idea, same scientific idea. You can do it.
But I had the problem to be the referee. So I referee the same person in 2 grants. And from my point of view, it was negative. So in that sense, I failed the first one. And the second time, I say, okay, it's the same. It didn't modify very much. And it failed straight. So I didn't read it almost. So it has an impact on the referee, sometimes negative. It's like an article that has been sent, we cannot do it, to send an article to multiple journals. And it's like you didn't take on board the comments. And so you just don't care. You write the fellowship and you send to everywhere. And so for me, as a referee, it was negative, failed both, that's it. Maybe I was too. Now that I'm listening to you, I was I'm too strict. So, do you have any question? Yes, please.
Can I apply even if I'm not from the European Union?
Yes.
Yeah. You want to check each funder's terms and conditions, but generally, EPSLC, yes. Royal Society, yes. RAEng, yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
I am not.
So, generally, yes, you can.
But if you are offered a DTP studentship with your fellowship, then the people who apply for that will have to be from the European Union. So this is where things start to get a little bit complicated. But for the fellowships themselves, they're normally they normally take a board tool about them.
Any other questions? Do you have a presentation for us?
There was, well, I think one thing that I wanted to show.
Yeah.
Sorry. I don't know, how many people are interested in applying for the Royal Academy of Engineering? Is anybody?
Everyone.
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 There's no hands because it's such an obvious question.
Just
They are
to-
shy, but everyone.
Just to explain a little bit how it works, UCL's limited to, I think it's 5, it changes each year, but last year it was 5 applicants who could come from UCL. We typically ask the departments to select their preferred candidate or candidates, so it's something to maybe flag with your department that you're interested in applying. You then have to go through a centralised UCL selection process, which we do over summer. So the deadline for application is early September to be RAEng. We try and select our internal candidates in June or July, possibly August. We're trying to make it earlier. And then so people in my office and then obviously your academic college will work with you on developing your full proposal to get that in. But there are a few steps before you can apply, as opposed to something like EPSRC where there's no limit to the number of applications from UCL or the time when you do it. There's no deadline, it's a rolling deadline. So yeah, I mean, we'll put the process up on the website and we'll advertise it around your departments. But if you are interested, it's worth speaking to your departments, you know, now, as soon as you've...
As soon as we finish this seminar. So,
sorry, it's there's no USB port on my laptop.
So while that's happening, maybe I can just fill in with something kind of on that note. I was.
Are you calling someone?
No, I'm trying to get into my email, so it doesn't seem to be letting me.
What is music?
Okay.
Huh?
Is this some music?
I don't know. What do you need something?
What are you missing?
Just an attachment that I'd emailed. I was just trying to grab it. It's okay, don't worry, I'll get it. You carry on.
So
then I'll-
please.
If you want to email it to Tony, it's logged in as Tony, so.
Okay. Does he have his? Thank you. So I'll send it.
So please.
So anyway, at the time that I was applying, I was at University of Leeds, and I was applying with a project to go to University of Hull, and it's probably just a random case, but University of Leeds had a selection process. I was not involved in that, and University of Hull did not have a selection process because there aren't that many people looking for it. Just to give you, another perspective of it. So then if it's something you really want to do, you can always find a way of doing it. I remember coming towards the interview stages of the fellowship, and remember I'm sitting in here and I'm applying to go somewhere else. So I could hear that the candidates that Leeds had, they were having a mock interview. So what is this mock interview? So I called up, I said, do you have a mock interview in your department? I'm going for this Royal Academy interview. Can I? So no, we don't have it. Okay. So I said, it's not a bad idea. Let's just get some feedback. So I had the slides for the interview. And I just went to two of my colleagues, postdocs who I was sharing. I said, have you got like half an hour for me? So yeah. I said, look, this is what is happening. I'm going for an interview tomorrow. Can I just practice this presentation in front of you? So yeah, fine. So yeah, at the end of it, asked me a couple of questions. One of those questions I got asked the day after. The guy asked me, a presentation. He just the first thing that came to his mind. So I'm sure that the team here would support you. But if they didn't, you can always find other ways as long as you really want to do something.
have a goal. UCL in itself has a very high rate of success on those fellowships, but we had 3 mocks interviews before going to my final interview, and I had 2 in my department. And every time you get them, and they just destroy you. Mock interview.
How did they destroy you? When did they destroy you?
But when you go to the final interview, you feel comfortable. So
Yeah.
nice, people are so nice with you.
Yeah, we know feedback from another colleague that applied, and then he didn't pass through Khalid, and he wrote it to me. It's like Khalid, he didn't look at me at all. It was very depressing. It was a good strategy because he was very sorry. The presentation was not prepared enough. He had done here the mock interview, but you were much more stringent, and he had a very, some of the questions we didn't know were.
Well, but here, this is not a mock interview. It's actually an interview to select you to go to the
Yes, you have to do the interview. So, what kind of questions do you ask for the selection?
There's always things on, impact, your track record, the risks associated with your project, why a project, why a fellowship, why UCL, how you're going to establish your independence. If you are going to any interviews, we're very happy to help you. Organise a mock interview. Typically, we try to get people, senior academics who actually sit on these interview panels. So, our fellows of Royal Academy of Engineering who are actually involved in the selection process. People who have sat on EPSLC panels, these sort of things. People who've got the fellowships, got the awards that you want. So to try and make it as realistic as possible. Also, if you get quite a diverse range, you'll typically get people who range from being quite open and sort of friendly to having a lot more aggressive questioning style. I think it's good to meet these because you never know on the actual day if you're going to get somebody who's going to antagonise you slightly. The trick is, even if someone is pushing you and maybe being a little bit unfair, you think, don't rise to the bait. It's smilingly answer all the questions. It's like a job interview, essentially. So you put forth your answer. Feel free to, if you don't think they're being fair or correct, you can always answer strongly and say, I think that this is the case, not that. But it's quite difficult if someone's sort of really attacking you not to become very defensive. And, it doesn't help to become defensive in an interview situation.
Yeah. And his website, you have loads of questions that you might be asking. So what I did, before going to the UCL stage, I download those questions, I answer one by one to prepare for the UCL interview.
To prepare to the UCL interview.
It's the Beams website, UCL Beams.
Yeah.
UCL Beams.
Okay.
You didn't know anything.
I didn't have any of this, but I was confident on my proposal. I wanted to see what they have to say on that. So I didn't have my mock interview was what I just told you, and all the practice for it was exactly. I just prepared my slide. Anyway, one thing that I just wanted to highlight, one of the questions the last question that they asked me was a shock for me because, anyway, the question was, tell to general audience in 30 seconds about your project, your future. And that was the last question, and that was a shock for me because, and the guy who was asking that question, so he asked about your research, and he said, your time is starting right now. And he was timing it, and then I was kind of hanging. Does he want me to tell him about my current project? I said, your time is going. So I just, made it up on the spot, said something. Be prepared for an unexpected question as well,
So I had one technical question.
Only one
Only one. 25 minutes.
of other place.
Yeah.
How much do you think that to be enthusiastic is important? So because I see in all three of you, you are really obsessed by your research, which is good. I like it. I'm very pleased to have been here, but it's yes. So you have to show that yes, this is your passion.
I want to bring it back. I think that one of the points that they said, if you are not really that passionate, maybe that's the answer. If you are not that passionate, it's not a fellowship.
Yes.
I mean, maybe that's how you can summarize.
Yes.
It becomes really, really obvious. So I had actually invited me a couple of years ago to help with the UCL round of interviews. And when you're on that side of the table, you do 15 or 20 interviews, and you see people coming in, and you know within the first few minutes whether or not somebody has sat down and thought about their research and is really enthusiastic about their application, or if somebody has just reproduced essentially the last grant that's gone in from their research group. I don't know if you feel the same, but for me that was quite obvious with many of the people coming in.
Yeah, I think you can tell when people have practiced, and I think it's really to your benefit to practice. It's like if you've started lecturing or started public speaking, you're a lot better. You know, it's a public speaking thing. You're speaking the interview, you're speaking to your interview panel. And there are certain elements, you know, for certain stock questions, you know, like, I don't know, being able to talk about the impact, or why is this a fellowship, or why are you the best person to do the fellowship, or who else is working in this area. You're almost always going to get a question around this, and I think it's very difficult to make it up on the spot compared to having some sort of prepared answer. So if you're coming in and you're answering everything for the first time and you have to think about it, it makes it very difficult to give a strong answer compared to someone who sat down, practiced, thought about what they want to say, the message they want to get across. So yeah, I mean, you can tell pretty quickly whether people are well prepared. And then yeah, I mean, being enthusiastic about your work, being passionate about your work is, it's always an attractive quality, and you know, if they're investing in you, you've got to make them want to invest in you as well as your work. So yeah, I think it's a good point.
Yeah, question maybe for Khalid. What is the view on IP on these fellowships, both like background and foreground IP? Should one write a specific section about this, or is there a general expectation about how IP is going to be handled?
If you're expecting to have IP, you should mention often what you see is people saying that they will work with UCLB to protect our IP. You know, UCL has a stance on IP. If you write something like that in your application, which is probably sufficient, it's then worth actually speaking to UCLB and finding out a bit about the process, because what tends to happen is people don't do that, and then you don't actually know what to do. So if you've never done it before, you're expecting IP, you know, I think it's sufficient to say that you're going to use this service that UCL offers to do it, but then sit down with them and speak to them and say, you know, this is the situation, this is what's happening. What will be the steps that we take, and then even that is enough then to give it a strong answer. I mean, you can write more about it if you're feeling confident, you know, if it's a bit more advanced, especially if you've never done it before. If you've got a track record, then please do mention that, because it's going to make them a lot more confident that you know exactly how to deal with this. And yeah, this is also something that you're probably going to have to potentially address before you submit, because it might be in the letter of support. If you've got an industrial partner, before they agree to support you, they're going to have to, you know, work out between each other, you know, if you're using UCLB, between all of you, exactly where you stand on IP before they agree to support the project.
But do you see any preference for open data and open source versus like commercializing IP in a fellowship?
I mean, funders, basically no. For funders, like, it depends. RAEng's like generating IP, they like protecting IP. Research councils, they like the idea of open source, open data, but actually they don't push it. I think as long as you've got a stance and you're willing to, a defensible stance, then that's sufficient. I certainly haven't seen a trend where people are getting marked down for having one over the other.
Just to add to that, so my research group has never generated patents. So obviously we have intellectual property, but nothing that has ever been secured with patent. And yet that wasn't a particular problem for the Royal Academy of Engineering. I went and spoke to UCLB. Each group within each department in UCL has a named contact. It's really worth talking to them because they are really friendly, and it's in their interest to make contact with researchers to be able to commercialise ideas. But certainly for RAEng, even though they do stress that they want you to talk about it, it's not a killer to not have any IP.
So I got the questions. The RAEng is going to provide the mentor. What do you expect of the mentor? So I said I don't have IP. I would like my mentor to guide me through IP process.
I know my problem is more like the background IP that we have.
Okay.
And you build a fellowship on top of it, and you create foreground IP, and then sort of how do you handle that? What do you write? What do you write in the proposal? We don't give away our background IP. That remains our background IP. We're going to generate some foreground IP. What do we do with that?
I suppose you should be securing your background IP with patent if it's really that sensitive. Is the answer.
Yeah, no, we've done it with UCLB, but it's just like, how do you write in the proposal? Are they like now really keen? Some of the research council are really pushing for open access publication, open data.
I was at a data strategy meeting last week. Essentially, the open access is really mandated journals. They're lagging quite a long way behind on the data. So, as it stands, although they're making, they're talking about it, I think it's not mandated, and essentially it's not going to disadvantage you for the time being.
If no, would be a good time. So the reason, so these are there's two things I wanted to say. That one is just in addition to what Helen's already covered, pretty much all the details. All the fellowships will have guidance notes. You should read those guidance notes before you start writing your fellowship or as you're writing your fellowship, because they essentially tell you in quite some detail what they're looking for. So these are the guidance notes from the year that I applied for that. And the reason why I'm showing these ones is because they've taken this out.
The famous matrix.
The famous matrix.
Yeah.
So, have you seen this before?
So they don't exist anymore. I remember this matrix.
It's no longer in the application. I don't think, Lydia, did you have to even fill one of these?
No,
in?
I never saw this before.
No, okay. So
They were on my time too.
They
So
were
I
your
had
time.
to actually
Yeah,
fill it. Did you fill a table?
yeah, it was the last year.
I have my table. I stick if you want, but yeah, I had to fill in a table, and I was surprised that the table wasn't there.
Yeah. So I think the reason why they've taken, I'm speculating here, but I think the reason they've taken it out is because this really puts people off applying. Because you look at this and you think, oh my gosh, I've written some papers, but I've never supervised a student. I think that was a number of undergraduate students supervised. I haven't got any patents, any grant funding. If somebody checked all of these boxes, then my question would be, well, why are you applying for a fellowship? Because you've done it all already. Really, what this shows you, the way you should look at this table is, this is saying the Royal Academy of Engineering is looking for a few of these things. They're looking for excellence in one area where you can really point to and say, yeah, okay, I've done really well at publishing papers, which was my case. I hadn't done well at securing intellectual property or supervising students, but I was able to talk when I wrote my personal statement, essentially, the fact, I can't remember what it's called, on the first page where you say, well, you're the person for the fellowship. I could say, well, I've made a big impact in the field by writing papers which are well cited. If I had other skills, I would make more of those other skills. So the reason I show this to you is because this is really telling you what they're looking for. Don't be put off by this. You don't have to check every box.
Can I just add that, the Royal Academy of Engineering, for example, is a very broad field, so all aspects of engineering. And I suspect that electronic engineering typically, research in electronic engineering typically publish more papers than research in civil engineering. And then this will change from field to field, from group to group. You know, you can see people who work in physics, for example, who have 1,000 papers. You know, or you can see professors in some, in mathematics who've got 15. So for this sort of thing, you really need to think about what's a good level for your field. So, you know, what is good for civil engineering is, you know, 10 papers compared to, say, 60 papers. You know, I would suggest that very few civil engineers, early career civil engineers, have published 60 papers. Some you may have, and that's, you know, brilliant, please apply. But if you haven't, but actually you think that, you know, you've published good quality papers in good quality journals and are being cited, then, you know, having, you know, 5 or 10 papers isn't a barrier to applying for this, or it certainly isn't a barrier for getting funded for this either.
I think the way we dealt with that at the interviews was just to ask the question, you know, how does your number of papers, you know, if it was a high number, you know, is this representative of the field, if it's a low number, the same question, and then you're able to then position your own research skills within the broader context of your community. People generally are aware of where they sit in terms of that.
Do you have any question? Question.
The maximums.
Huh?
The maximums are funny. They
Yeah,
look,
the
they look a bit
maximum is,
random.
Right, so the
Number of citations from 30 to 1,000.
To 1,000. Okay, it's like,
It's like whatever.
Not like right sentence, you know.
But you know, why do you cut it off at 1,171?
It's not a cut-off. This is from previously
1,000.
successful.
Yeah.
So
So
this
this
is-
is the maximum ever seen.
Yeah. This maximum I've seen was this last year. It's just
last 3 years.
3 years.
3 years. Yeah, because it was strange, just like, oh, what is that?
71.
Yeah,
Not 32.
the typical average, I think, is the column to look at. You know, about 10 papers, about 100 citations, you know, about £10,000-ish of funding, of research funding you might have secured. For example, as a travel grant, that would be a reasonable amount. So on average, the numbers actually make sense.
Yes. And they never seen an H index in those 3 years. That's also
It was a
interesting.
new thing, so
Yeah,
they were going to
right.
ask about it that year, but they hadn't had previously asked about it.
So, okay, do you want to add something else? Something to encourage us to apply?
I don't know, I kind of covered most of the things that I wanted to say. Maybe just one more thing. Remember, in my case, again, it's an odd case, it seems to me, but I dropped him an email and I asked him, I had a question, and I just contacted Royal Academy and I said, my research is very much medically oriented. Would you be interested in this research? And they just got back with a couple of hours saying that yes, this ultimately depends on the review comments. So if you had anything, you know, that research office could answer or wasn't sure, or you know, you can also contact me. I would also encourage you to, as a first point of contact, with contact research office and discuss, because they have seen it and academic communicate with the research officer. You know, this consistent communicate with research office. So that's enough on my side. Don't give up.
Give up. This is one of the things. Okay, so one of the measures, don't give up. So, do you have anything that you want to add?
No, it just depends on each one, what you want for yourself, and what you expect, where you want to be, and what you have to do to get there.
Okay.
And don't give up on that.
I'd say two things. The first is that if you're from an underrepresented group within engineering, don't be put off applying, because, well, for two reasons. One is because the RAEng actually gives an extra application slot for people who are underrepresented, namely women and BME. you're not more likely to get a fellowship, but you are more likely to get out at the university stage, which frankly is the hardest part, being selected as UCL's candidate. But the other thing I'd say is that I'm a year into my fellowship. I've thoroughly enjoyed it all so far, and I've had loads of support from the funders. So it's definitely something worth doing if this is the kind of work you want to pursue.
Yes. Yes. So you are on track to be an academic, and unfortunately, I have to say thank you so much for really good. I have to say thank you very much. Next time we reverse the situation. So here you see the future academics. We will see entrepreneurs. So we see what happened if you are a PhD student, a researcher, and for reasons that are beyond the explanation of us, you decide to set up a companies. And so you give up completely your research to become an entrepreneur, successful entrepreneur. So you will see 4 people here, very successful entrepreneurs. Okay, so thank you so much, and thank you again. It was thank you so much. It was really interesting. I didn't expect it. It was such an amazing time. Go back to my office.